It seems like everywhere you turn these days, someone's talking about blockchain.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not just crypto anymore.
Right.
You've got companies jumping, governments are starting to explore it.
Yeah, definitely.
Even like my neighbor, the one who's always got some new gadget or project, they're even getting into blockchain now.
Yeah, it really is spreading.
So for this deep dive, we're going to really hone in on where blockchain is actually taking hold.
Okay.
And specifically, we're going to look at developing and emerging economies.
Sounds good.
We really want to get past all the hype.
Yeah, cut through the noise.
Exactly. And see what's actually happening, on the ground.
Absolutely.
What's the reality of it all?
Right.
And we've got a great resource to help us with this.
Oh, yeah.
A systematic review that looked at 86 different research studies.
Wow.
All published between 2019 and the middle of 2023.
So pretty recent then.
Yeah. Very up to date.
Nice.
So it's kind of like a big picture view of what academics are focusing on. When it comes to blockchain adoption.
I like a good overview.
Yeah. And we're also going to be keeping in mind a paper on the philosophy of smart contracts. And that might seem a little bit, out there. But it's important to remember the sort of underlying capabilities that make all of this adoption possible.
Right. The foundation.
Yeah, because smart contracts, they're really fascinating.
They are.
These digital agreements that basically carry themselves out.
Yeah, automatically once certain conditions are met.
It's like magic, but digital magic.
Yeah, exactly.
So our mission for this deep dive
All right, I'm ready.
is to really try to extract the key insights.
Okay.
Where are we seeing blockchain being implemented in the real world? What's driving that adoption?
Yeah,
what are the challenges people are facing?
The hurdles.
Exactly. And ultimately, what does all this tell us about how these economies are embracing new tech?
Right, the bigger picture.
So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
I think it's worth starting with a very basic question, because I know we throw the term blockchain around a lot.
Yeah.
What is it in simple terms?
Okay, good question.
Beyond all the buzzwords like
Correct.
disruptive and revolutionary and all that.
Yeah, get down to brass tacks.
So what is blockchain?
Well, at its core, blockchain is a type of shared digital record-keeping system.
Okay, so how is that different from what we already have?
Well, instead of having one central database where all the information is kept, with blockchain, the information is spread across many computers, all linked together in a network.
So it's kind of distributed.
Yeah, that's the idea. And that structure is what's attracting so much attention.
Okay, so what's so special about this distributed structure?
Well, it leads to some pretty interesting features.
Okay, lay them on me.
Decentralization is a big one.
Okay.
Meaning no single entity controls the whole system.
So no single point of failure.
Right, exactly.
Interesting.
Then there's transparency. The details of transactions are often publicly visible on the network.
So everyone can see what's happening.
Yeah, within the network.
Okay.
And immutability is another big one.
Immutability.
Yeah, it means once a record is added to the blockchain, it's incredibly difficult to change or delete.
Ah, so it's super secure.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
It also offers really secure data storage. And it can help build trust between parties even without traditional intermediaries like banks.
So cutting out the middleman,
Yeah.
in a way.
Interesting. So it's come a long way from when it first started.
It really has.
I remember when the only thing anyone associated with blockchain was Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah. That was the early days.
I still feel like a lot of people,
Still think that.
yeah, they're stuck there.
It's understandable, though.
Yeah, Bitcoin was kind of the first big example of blockchain in action.
Exactly. It came about in 2009, based on Satoshi Nakamoto's 2008 white paper.
Yeah, a landmark moment.
For sure. But the technology has come such a long way since then.
So what are we seeing now? What are some of the more recent developments?
Well, now we're seeing much more complex uses emerging, like smart contracts. Okay, yeah, those digital agreements we were talking about.
Exactly. And really sophisticated systems for tracking goods through supply chains.
So it's not just about digital money anymore.
No, not at all.
So zooming out a bit,
Okay.
what's the overall picture of blockchain adoption in these developing and emerging economies?
All right. So based on the review, it seems that while there's definitely a lot of excitement and interest
Yeah.
and a growing body of research, the adoption itself is generally still in its early stages.
So it's still early days.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Huh.
But what is clear is that there's a significant increase in academic interest in this area.
That's interesting.
The fact that we have 86 studies published in just a few years.
Yeah, from 2019 to the middle of 2023.
Exactly. That really underscores the growing attention.
So where is all this research happening?
Well, geographically, the review highlights Malaysia and India as having the highest number of published studies.
Okay.
But we're also seeing significant contributions from Jordan, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Indonesia.
This is pretty widespread.
Yeah. And interestingly, about a quarter of the studies didn't even specify their target country.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that suggests some of the research is more general, conceptual.
So not necessarily tied to a specific location.
Exactly.
And what about the type of research?
Oh, good question.
Is it mostly theoretical, or are researchers actually looking at real-world applications?
Well, the good news is that the vast majority of the studies in the review were empirical.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means they were based on collecting and analyzing real-world data.
Ah, so actual observations, not just hypotheses.
Exactly. They're looking at things like people's intentions to adopt blockchain and their actual adoption behaviors.
So getting into the nitty-gritty.
Like boots-on-the-ground research.
So now that we have a sense of where the research is happening and what kind of research it is, let's dive into the specifics.
Okay.
Which industries are we seeing the most research on blockchain adoption in these economies?
All right, so the review highlights a few key sectors that are really leading the way. And supply chain management is definitely at the top.
Makes sense. Yeah, you always hear about blockchain and supply chains.
There's a strong link there, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about the need for better tracking and transparency.
Yeah, being able to trace where things come from.
Exactly like knowing where your food comes from.
Farm to table.
Exactly how it's been handled. All of that.
Yeah.
And in fact, over 22% of the reviewed articles focused on applications within supply chains.
That's a pretty big chunk.
It is.
Then that aligns with a lot of the real-world examples we hear about.
Yeah.
Companies using blockchain to track everything from coffee beans to pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common.
So what's next after supply chain in terms of research interest?
Well, finance and banking are right up there too,
Okay.
accounting for almost 15% of the articles.
So still a significant amount.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And this is partly due to the early connection with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
Right. The OG blockchain application.
But it's also because of blockchain's potential to improve efficiency and security in financial operations.
So streamlining things and making them safer.
Exactly, which can ultimately boost profitability and performance in the financial sector.
Yeah, it's all about the bottom line.
In a way.
And it seems logical that finance would be interested in blockchain,
Yeah.
given the inherent need for trust and security in financial transactions.
Absolutely. Trust is key.
So what other sectors are generating a lot of research interest?
Healthcare is another big one,
Okay.
with significant and growing attention making up about 11% of the studies.
So a sizable portion.
Yeah, and the potential for securely managing sensitive health and medical information is a major driver there.
Makes sense. Healthcare data is so important.
Yeah, you don't want that getting into the wrong hands.
Definitely not.
And the review even mentions specific examples like Drug Ledger for tracking medications through the supply chain.
Oh, wow. So that can help combat counterfeit drugs.
Exactly, which is a serious issue in some regions.
Yeah, that's crucial.
And then there are systems like HealthChain and MedRec for managing electronic medical records securely.
So lots of potential applications in healthcare.
Oh, yeah, a lot of potential.
And those sound incredibly valuable, especially in developing economies where data security infrastructure might be less advanced.
Yeah, that's a good point. The need is definitely there.
Are there any other industries showing notable research activity in this space?
Yes, we're seeing research across a range of other sectors.
Okay, give me a rundown.
Education is one where blockchain is being explored for managing academic credentials and online learning records.
So like making sure diplomas are legitimate.
Exactly. And then there's logistics, again, with a focus on improving transparency and traceability in shipping and transportation.
So knowing where your packages are.
Right. And when they'll arrive, all of that.
Interesting.
And agriculture is another area where they're looking at using blockchain for traceability and managing data related to crop quality and safety.
Like tracking tea quality, for example.
Exactly, making sure it meets certain standards.
Wow, so many different applications.
Yeah, and the reviews table 1 actually gives us a broader picture,
Okay.
mentioning applications being researched in manufacturing maritime industries, energy, even for small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs.
Wow, SMEs too.
Yeah, and even in tourism.
Wow. It's really everywhere.
It seems that way.
So blockchain really could be a versatile tool.
Right. It seems like it.
With potential uses in almost every part of an economy.
That's the exciting part.
So we have a good idea of where this research is focused.
Yeah.
But now let's think about why.
Okay, the why.
Why are these developing and emerging economies so interested in adopting blockchain?
All right. What's the motivation?
What are the main benefits they're hoping to see?
Well, it's not just about embracing the latest technology for its own sake.
Yeah, there has to be a reason.
Right. They're trying to solve problems.
Right.
The unique characteristics of blockchain offer solutions to existing challenges and create new possibilities that are particularly relevant in these contexts.
So it's about finding the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And the review identifies several key advantages that are driving this interest.
Okay, so what are the most significant benefits being highlighted in the research?
Well, greater traceability and transparency in supply chains are major drivers, as we discussed. Improved control over who can access data and better protection of user privacy are also significant.
Yeah, data privacy is a huge concern these days.
Absolutely. And blockchain can also enhance the process of verifying identities.
Right, like making sure people are who they say they are.
Exactly. And of course, it provides a higher level of security for data and transactions.
Which is essential in any digital system.
Right. And beyond that, the research points to potential cost reductions.
Okay.
Faster transaction speeds.
Interesting.
And the ability for users to remain pseudonymous if needed.
So they can have some level of anonymity.
Yeah, if the situation calls for it.
So we're talking about tangible improvements in efficiency, security, and trust.
Exactly. Those are the big three.
And those could be really transformative in many developing economies.
Absolutely. They could have a huge impact.
So give me an example. Like, how would these benefits play out in the real world?
Well, imagine being able to instantly verify the authenticity of educational diplomas.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one.
Making sure that the medicines people are taking are genuine.
Yeah, that's critical.
Or making cross-border payments much faster and cheaper.
Oh, yeah, that would be a game changer.
Especially for people sending money back home to their families.
Huge impact.
And blockchain's ability to reduce information imbalances and lower the costs associated with transactions could be especially beneficial for new and smaller businesses trying to compete in the market.
Leveling the playing field in a way.
Yeah.
So, for example, how would this help a small business?
Imagine a smallholder farmer.
Okay.
Using a blockchain-based system to prove the quality and origin of their produce. Directly to buyers, cutting out intermediaries, and potentially getting a better price for their goods.
Wow, so they're in control of their own destiny.
Exactly. They have more power in the system.
Yeah, that's a really powerful example.
It shows the potential.
It really does.
It paints a picture of a lot of potential.
But
we also know that adopting new technologies always comes with its share of difficulties.
Yeah, there are always bumps in the road.
For sure. So what are some of the major obstacles and challenges that these economies are encountering when it comes to wider blockchain adoption?
Yeah, what are the hurdles?
Well, the review highlights issues like scalability.
Okay.
Can the blockchain network handle a large number of transactions quickly and efficiently as adoption grows?
So it has to be able to keep up.
Right. It can't get bogged down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the technology itself is still evolving.
Yeah.
So in many ways, it's still considered relatively immature.
So it's still a work in progress.
It is. There are still kinks to work out. And then there are the legal and regulatory uncertainties.
Yes, the legal landscape.
Yeah, it's often unclear how blockchain fits into existing frameworks.
Makes sense.
And the potential for cyber attacks is a major concern as well.
Well, with any digital system, there's always that risk.
True. And then there's the lack of interoperability.
Okay, explain that one.
It means that different blockchain systems often can't easily communicate or work together.
So they're like isolated islands.
Kind of. And that can limit the usefulness of blockchain, especially if you need different systems to talk to each other.
So it's a bit of a fragmented landscape.
Yeah, in some ways.
Are there specific challenges that are more pronounced in certain industries?
Yes, definitely. Each sector has its own unique hurdles.
Okay.
The review's Table 9 actually provides a more detailed breakdown by industry.
Interesting.
For instance, in agriculture, a lack of clear government regulations and issues around trust among different players in the supply chain are significant barriers.
So it's a bit of a Wild West out there.
Yeah, in some ways.
Okay, what about education?
Well, in education, concerns about data privacy and the varying levels of digital literacy among users pose challenges.
So not everyone's comfortable with the tech yet.
Yep. Exactly. And then the energy sector is facing issues like competition between different blockchain platforms and complex regulatory frameworks.
It's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it's a complex landscape.
And what about finance and healthcare, since those are such big areas of focus?
Good question.
What are their specific challenges?
Well, in finance and banking, the need to comply with regulations related to money laundering is a major obstacle.
Ah, so staying on the right side of the law.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance.
And healthcare.
Well, healthcare faces a whole range of challenges.
Like what?
Concerns about how and where sensitive patient data is stored.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Ensuring data privacy, the lack of standardized systems, the often high costs associated with developing and implementing blockchain solutions.
So it's not a cheap endeavor.
No, not at all. And then there's often a shortage of technical expertise within the healthcare sector.
So they need people who understand the tech.
Exactly. And sometimes even a lack of strong support from management.
So they need buy-in from the top.
Yeah, leadership is key.
And what about other industries like logistics and maritime?
Well, they also report issues like getting widespread social acceptance of the technology.
So convincing people that it's safe and reliable.
Right, building that trust.
Okay.
Navigating government regulations, dealing with scalability and interoperability issues, and addressing knowledge gaps among stakeholders.
So a lot of education and outreach is needed.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like there's a real mix of technological hurdles, organizational challenges, and even environmental factors like insufficient infrastructure in some areas.
Yeah, it's multifaceted.
So just having the technology available isn't enough.
Right. It's not a magic bullet.
The surrounding systems and the people involved need to be ready too.
Absolutely. It's a whole ecosystem.
Now, the review also looks at the theoretical side of adoption.
Okay.
The theory, the why behind it from an academic perspective.
Interesting.
What models are researchers using to try and understand why some individuals or organizations adopt blockchain while others don't?
So trying to get inside people's heads.
Yeah. What are the motivations?
Well, researchers are using well-established models from the field of technology adoption to analyze the various factors that influence whether or not someone intends to adopt blockchain.
So these models are like frameworks for understanding decision-making.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the review found several of these models being used quite frequently in the research.
Okay, so which of these models are proving to be the most relevant when it comes to understanding blockchain adoption in these economies?
Well, the Technology Acceptance Model, or TAM, is a key one.
TAM?
Yeah, it basically looks at two main things.
Okay.
How useful people perceive the technology to be.
So if they think it'll actually help them.
Right, and how easy they think it will be to use.
So perceived usefulness and ease of use.
Exactly.
Okay, and what other models are they using?
The Technology Organization Environment, or TOE framework, is also widely used.
TOE.
Yeah, and this model considers three main contexts.
Okay.
The technological aspects,
Uh-huh.
the organizational factors within a company, and the broader environmental influences.
So it's a more holistic view.
Yeah, it takes into account the bigger picture.
Okay.
Then you have the Unified Theory of Acceptance and Use of Technology, or UTAO.
UTAO.
Yeah, and the Diffusion of Innovation, or DOI theory, which focuses on how new ideas and technologies spread through a population.
So like how blockchain goes from a niche thing to something everyone's using.
Exactly, tracking its adoption journey.
We've touched on some of those ideas already, like how useful people think blockchain will be. Are there any specific elements within these models that are proving particularly important for blockchain adoption in developing economies?
Yes. Within TAM, the idea of perceived usefulness.
Okay.
The belief that using blockchain will actually improve their performance or outcomes.
So they have to believe it'll make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. And perceived ease of use are consistently being examined.
So it can't be too complicated.
Right. If it's too difficult to use, people will just give up.
Makes sense.
But it's worth noting that while generally seen as important, some studies have found situations where these weren't the strongest predictors of adoption.
Oh, interesting. So there are other factors at play too.
Yeah, it's not always so straightforward.
Okay, what about the TOE framework?
Well, the TOE framework helps us look at a wider range of factors. For example, the relative advantage of blockchain compared to existing systems.
So is it actually better than what they're already using?
Right. Is it worth making the switch?
Okay.
The level of support from top management within an organization?
So leadership buy-in is important.
Absolutely. And the competitive pressures in the market.
So are there competitors using blockchain?
Exactly. All these things can influence adoption decisions.
And what about DOI?
Well, DOI highlights characteristics of blockchain itself that can influence adoption.
Okay.
Such as its perceived advantage over current methods, how well it fits with existing systems, and how complex it's seen to be.
So it has to be a good fit for the specific context.
Exactly. One size doesn't fit all.
And one thing that's interesting is that many studies are combining and expanding on these models.
Oh, really?
Yeah, often adding the concept of trust as a crucial factor, influencing whether people are willing to adopt blockchain.
Trust is so important.
It really is the foundation of everything.
Especially in the digital world.
So it sounds like researchers are really trying to develop a detailed understanding of what motivates blockchain adoption.
Yeah, they're trying to get the full picture.
Recognizing that it's not just about the technology itself,
Right.
but also the broader context and how people perceive it.
It's a complex interplay of factors.
So finally, what are some of the main gaps in our current understanding that this review has identified?
Okay, the gaps.
Where do we need more research and information?
Well, the review points out several significant gaps.
Okay.
One major issue is that we don't have a lot of studies that actually measure the real-world use of blockchain.
Oh, interesting.
Most of the research focuses on whether people intend to adopt it,
Mm-hmm.
which, as we know, doesn't always translate into actual implementation and sustained use.
Right. Intentions don't always lead to actions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say you're going to use it and another to actually do it and stick with it.
That's a really important point.
It is. There's a difference between intention and behavior.
And there's also a need for more long-term studies that track how adoption unfolds over time.
Yeah, longitudinal studies.
Exactly.
Most of the current research gives us a snapshot in time, but we need to understand how adoption evolves and what factors influence its sustainability.
So how it plays out over the long haul.
Exactly.
And the review also highlights the lack of a comprehensive model that can explain blockchain adoption across different industries within developing and emerging economies.
So a model that can account for the nuances of each sector.
Exactly, because what drives adoption in healthcare might be quite different from what drives it in agriculture.
Right. Different sectors, different needs, different challenges.
So we can't really have a one-size-fits-all explanation.
It's highly unlikely. Each context is unique.
Okay, what other gaps did they identify?
Well, researchers also need to pay more attention to the broader business ecosystem in which blockchain is being implemented.
Okay, so looking beyond the individual company.
Exactly. Considering the whole network of stakeholders, the specific capabilities and characteristics of blockchain in different applications, and how these factors influence adoption decisions.
So it's not just about blockchain in general.
Right. It's about how it's being used and what it can actually do.
Okay.
And then there's the increasing integration of blockchain with other technologies like the Internet of Things or IoT, artificial intelligence, or AI and cloud computing.
Right. All those emerging technologies are converging.
Exactly. And there's a need to study the adoption of these integrated systems.
So how does blockchain work in combination with other technologies?
Right. How do they complement each other?
And finally, the review notes that there's an imbalance in the geographical focus of the research.
Oh, it's interesting.
With less attention being paid to the least developed countries.
The LDCs,
Exactly.
which are the very places that could potentially see some of the most significant benefits from this technology.
So we need to make sure we're not leaving anyone behind.
Right. Equity is important.
So it sounds like while we've learned a lot about blockchain adoption in these economies,
Yeah, we're making progress.
there are still a lot of unanswered questions.
Definitely.
And areas that need further exploration to really understand its full potential and the factors that will shape its future.
It's an ongoing journey.
So let's wrap things up.
Okay.
What are the key things we should take away from this deep dive into the research?
Well, the main message is that blockchain adoption in developing and emerging economies shows a great deal of promise.
Okay.
But it's still navigating a complex landscape of opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, there are a lot of factors at play.
There are. And there's a significant and growing body of research trying to understand the various factors that influence its adoption across a diverse range of industries.
So people are paying attention.
Yeah, a lot of brilliant minds are working on this.
And the potential upsides are really significant, aren't they?
They are, absolutely.
We talked about efficiency, transparency, security.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
And those can be particularly impactful in these economies where trust in traditional systems might be lower and the need for more streamlined and reliable processes is often critical.
Exactly. It can be a real game changer.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener.
Okay, go for it.
Considering the unique challenges and opportunities in developing and emerging economies that we've discussed today, what overlooked factors, perhaps outside of the purely technological or economic, might significantly speed up or conversely slow down the widespread and impactful adoption of blockchain technology beyond the specific sectors that are currently getting the most attention.
So thinking outside the box.
Yeah, think about the broader societal and infrastructural context that might hold the key to unlocking its full potential.
That's a great challenge.
It's definitely something worth pondering as we continue to observe the evolving world of blockchain technology and its far-reaching implications.
It's an exciting space to watch.
It really is. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.